Hi, I'm James Ead, and this is Roar. I can't roar like the lion, but I can speak up and speak out and help preserve our democracy because it is under threat. There are enemies abroad, there are enemies in front internally as well. And these enemies don't know they're enemies, they think they're patriots. But what we celebrated recently was the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. And for almost 250 years, we've been despot free. But is that true today? Are we living in the same society that the founders envisioned? I'm going to bring in Rick Rosner and help me discuss what's going on today in terms of the preservation of our democracy. Hello, Rick. Hi. So we think there's something to roar about today.
Yeah, there's a ton to, though. I have tried to back away from freaking out as much because it was, I'm vaccinated against shingles, but I got in such a bad argument with a Trumpy buddy of mine that I had a breakthrough case. It was only for a few days, it was very mild. Then I got a canker sore, and both these things are stress related. And I realized I need to freak out a little bit less.
Yeah,
Spend
I agree.
less time on X and stuff. But I also think that, like, my thesis statement for today is that everything fits under the umbrella of immunity and impunity.
Well done. Well said.
So we're at the point, we're 1/3 of the way through Trump's presidency. 1/3 of the way through Biden's presidency, he pulled us out of Afghanistan, which I think most people would agree was a mistake, that we should have at least tried to hold Kabul. Though he was set up to pull us out because at the end of Trump's presidency, he promised the Taliban that if they held back on marching on Kabul, that we would withdraw by April of 2021. And I think Biden lasted a couple more months than that, but he was set up to do it, but it was a mistake regardless. And he's the president; he bears responsibility. But there's an equivalence between that mistake and Trump's mistake of starting a stupid, unwinnable war with Iran. And you could argue, as I just did kind of, that Biden was set up to kind of be obligated to pull out, or else have to send in thousands more troops to fight the Taliban. And Trump's decision was all his own, except, he was given a snow job by Netanyahu, who said it would be a cakewalk. But in any case, it's a somewhat equivalent situation, except in terms of the consequences among the American voters, where Biden pulls us out and it wrecks his presidency. He loses 10, 12 percentage points of approval. He goes from, high 40s, maybe 50% approval. Pretty good for a modern president. Down to, the low 40s, high 30s. Trump does this stupid war, makes gas prices explode, inflation explode. His net approval actually creeps up a little bit, goes from 38 to 39%, which is frustrating because I would argue that Trump's war is worse than Biden's withdrawal, but he doesn't suffer for it. Biden had one huge senior moment in that debate, so bad that he had to withdraw from running. Trump shows signs of losing his shit all the time. I guess, like, if you listen to, the longer he speaks, the more bullshit and confusion he piles up.
Yes,
he called he talked about the Islamic Republic of Japan,
right?
Which by itself, okay, people screw up.
Yeah, it could be a one-off, but it's not.
But cumulatively, it's a lot. Right. and the swollen ankles and the hands covered with makeup and having to take a dementia test every 6 months. But Twitter is full of people saying, "Hey, Jake Tapper, when are you going to write a book about Trump being old and increasingly, debilitated?" And because Tapper famously wrote a book about Biden's decline. And so, and nothing from Tapper about that. And again, there's an equivalent situation. They're both old, both showing signs of age. Trump suffers few consequences.
But neither one of these gets to your core thesis in impunity and immunity.
Yeah, and when I say impunity, ICE just did another really bad shooting.
Right.
Shot the wrong guy, a guy who's been here 35 years. Upstanding guy, sent 3 kids through college, obviously was playing by the rules. They claimed he tried to ram them with his vehicle. They always claim that. The footage that's out there indicates no such thing. Eyewitnesses, at least 4 eyewitnesses, say that ICE is lying. Is any ICE member of ICE going to even lose their job over this? Probably not. Impunity. One more thing. Trump's Department of Agriculture said, we're doing great with meat. American farmers are selling more meat than ever before. They just had to lower the amount of meat they said American farmers have sold by 90%.
90.
They said it was a math error. Okay, maybe it was, because that would be a really crazy lie to tell. But again, this will not cause Trump to lose any support.
Well, it's interesting, because I think he's been emboldened in his second administration because he was impeached, but he wasn't convicted, and he thinks that he can do anything, and there will be no consequences. And he's got a lot of reason to think that. And one of the things is when the country was founded, there were 3 branches, and they were co-equal. And one of the things that Congress has to do is hold the executive power in check. And Congress has failed to do that. So one of the things that we have to do is not only, Trump's going to try to hold on to power, but let's assume that he was not successful, just as he did on the last time he tried to hold on power with people storming the Capitol. But that was unsuccessful. He still claims that the election is rigged without evidence. And the whole point is that Congress has to do its job as well. And they have to grow a spine. Some people are starting to speak up and speak out. Some of the Republicans that actually seem to have had enough. And one of the things that I think is going to be a consequence is Republicans were afraid to take on Trump because then he could endorse someone else in their primary and they would lose. And they're no longer so afraid of that because Trump's endorsement no longer carries the weight that it used to. Because I do think that enough people are catching on that this guy, he's only lying when his lips are moving, but it's one of those things.
When he's asleep, he's an angel. It's what they used to say about Dennis the Menace.
But this is a war of choice, but we cannot go to war without congressional approval, and Congress has not held his feet to the fire.
Well, they passed a resolution in one of the sides of Congress, but it's not binding.
Yeah.
And Congress has some crazy misbehavior right now. Mitch McConnell, senator from Kentucky, is either dead or brain dead. He had a heart attack 3.5 weeks ago, and they have been hiding him. He hasn't shown up. He hasn't been in public since. Everybody, including the governor of Kentucky, says you got to show proof of life. The deal is if they can hide his body until August 3rd, they do not have to hold a special election to replace him. So everybody thinks that's what they're doing. They're doing weekend at Bernie's for the next 3 weeks because they don't want to risk having a special election and putting somebody in there, the Republicans, that will make will reduce their chances in the election that matters, the election in November. So are they going to be able to hide Mitch McConnell's body until August 3rd? It's more crazy impunity. Like you're going to keep a dead guy hidden for 6 weeks as part of shenanigans.
Yeah, and we wish him the best. I hope he isn't dead, and we don't have proof that he is. But it would seem to be easy enough to prove that he is alive.
Just have him freaking wave it. I mean, you could just have it. They should turn to AI. AI, have Mitch McConnell wave at the camera.
Yeah, and that is another thing that has harmed the public trust. Is now that it looks like AI can reproduce almost anything. But that's another thing to roar about on another time. Right now, it's what is it going to take to wake up the voters to that this administration has done incredible harm to our economy and to our status in the world. And this most recent example, maybe it's not the most recent, but a recent example is what Trump did with the World Cup, interfering with the FIFA president to get a person who had on the U.S. team that had gotten a red card. He had him reinstated. And now this is breaking all sorts of international understandings in that world leaders do not interfere. And that's I don't know if it's an unwritten rule or if it's actually specified in their
there are ways to do it, but my understanding is that that bad ref calls are, bad calls by refs are built into sports. Refs are human, and some refs, are corruptible, and you're going to get bad calls either due to
but we live with that. Right. That's one of the things we can argue about for a long time.
And it's maddening, but it's something that happens. People that call, the initial call, people have, are undecided whether it should have been yellow or red or whatever. But it's not unprecedented, but it is corrupt to have.
And the international community, it was so annoyed by this attempt to really essentially cheating by the U.S. And it's not a reflection on the U.S. team, who was badly beaten by Belgian team.
Yeah, so that was actually, it was bad that the U.S. got walloped, but the silver lining was that it removed Trump's bullshit from further consideration because with or without Balogun, the red card guy, they wouldn't have won.
Right. And so it would have been so much more in keeping with the spirit of the game to allow the red card to stand for the leader of the country, the head of state, not to interfere. And it's going to cost the FIFA president his job. But it was, it's not affecting Trump's.
Yeah, and FIFA does have a long history of being buyable.
Absolutely. Yes. This is
also as theme. Americans, we only give a shit about soccer every 2 years. Olympics and then World Cup. And then we go back to, all right, our homegrown sports.
Yes. But the youth of the United States, they are getting soccer into their system more than you and I did, because we didn't grow up with it. And so and I think that the future of soccer is brighter than it is today. However, it's true right now that we do dial in on the Olympics and the World Cup. And it's just a shame that one more thing he's touched, instead of the Midas touch where he turns it into gold, he turns it into lead.
Now he's fucking with the columns at the front of the White House.
Yeah.
We all learned, I don't know if everybody learned it, but we learned about the 3 kinds of columns. Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. And really, nobody gives a crap about Ionic, but Doric is the is the elegant one, the the simplest one, and then Corinthian is like acanthus leaves, like popping out all over the place. Trump wants the fancier columns. He's going to tear down the columns somehow, and it's so stupid.
Has there been a tackier president?
No. I mean, and you could argue, I mean, he's always had terrible taste, but you could argue that his extremely bad taste is like maybe a further, erosion of his self-control.
Yes. Yeah. And
but you asked a question: when will the voters wake up? And it's a truism in politics that the vast middle doesn't start paying attention until at the earliest a month before an election, if they pay attention at all. And the vast middle, the independents, that's 50% of the electorate now.
Right.
And when I look at Trump's 40% support, I look at it this way. Maybe I'm wrong. 20% lunatics who will never give up on Trump, and 20% of Americans who don't pay that much attention, but who reflectively think that supporting America, the president, is part of, being an American, being patriotic. So you've got some a-holes who support Trump, and then you've got some, institutionalists. I don't know if I want to call them that. I mean, yeah, you've got some bad people who support Trump, some racists, some lib-tears, enjoyers, but you probably also have some basic folks who aren't super invested in politics, who are like, this is America, we voted for the man, we have to give him a chance even though he's stumbling.
Yeah. There is some truth to what you say, and that there are people who still think my country right or wrong, and they define that as patriotism. But I think the founding fathers thought that an informed electorate was the key to preserving the democracy. And so I don't think we get the right to be uninformed. I think we need to stay involved in the government, or we get the government we deserve. And I think that is what happened. We cannot say that this was a mistake. The majority of people voted, or close to the majority of people voted for this guy. And we had a prior administration, so you can't say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. It's our fault.
Yeah.
We put him back in. And now he's more shameless than ever. He feels unencumbered. He feels like there's no consequences for any action that he takes. And another thing that's so silly that it's funny is his reflecting pool. And he didn't bid the contract out. He hired somebody who had.
And then he drove. So he's got, a regular SUV weighs maybe 4,000 pounds.
Okay.
His SUVs, but he's weigh 15 to 20,000 pounds because they are armored, and the windows are yay thick. He drove 5 of those on the pool after it was sealed. He drove 100,000 pounds worth of vehicle over this rubber ass sealant, and only a couple days after it was laid down. So also, I've read a lot of stuff, but I believe it. This pool is a century old, and it's always been kind of a problem. It's a huge freaking pool. Trump himself showed it's 2,000 feet long, and I don't know how many feet across, and it's always leaked. And actually, leaking is part of how you recycle. You constantly have to fill it with water, and that helps turn the water over so you don't get this issue. But at some point in the past, the granite, which is the floor of the pool, had already been sealed. And you can't put sealant on top of sealant that it won't stick.
Right.
So, it was incompetence.
That's the incompetence. There's no question about it, because there's things about the design that required the two sides to be laid down at near the same time within half an hour, so that they could bind, and that wasn't observed.
There's Oh, so there's a recipe for putting the stuff down.
Absolutely, and it's like don't do it during the hot peak sunlight because then the sealant won't take and all of this kind of thing, and they just didn't do any of the things that they had to have done to make it seal. And but on top of that, Trump thought that there was a 350-foot gash that was put in, and that's the pipeline that goes under the reflecting pool. That's always been there and always should be there. It's by design. And he mistook it for a vandal. And so he's on television telling everyone it's been vandalized. When
and also if you so
it's
at
not
the
a bug,
edge,
it's a feature.
right, so at the edges, the pool is 18 inches deep. In the center, it's 30 inches deep. For somebody to take a box cutter, and they would have to be bent over like they're, like they're, I don't know, like they're harvesting with a scythe. They'd have to be like, it would be very apparent.
Yeah. And there's cameras all around. And, in any case, he just says nonsense. Like people are eating their pets and things like that. And it's like, it's just completely not only untrue, but it's farcical. These things that he's saying, and they're so easily debunked and disproven, yet people don't seem to be picking up that this guy is checked out. If he was ever checked in, he's checked out by now.
Here's one more asymmetry: the Hunter Biden thing. So Hunter Biden, so people don't know the full story of Hunter Biden, but Hunter Biden actually was highly trained as a financial professional. He had an MBA and all this stuff. Anyway, I mean, there's a Ukrainian oil company, Burisma, that had troubles with corruption, and they wanted to set up a board that made them look more responsible, more
respectable. Yeah,
you're right. So they hired Hunter Biden, who had a history of serving on boards. He was like the head of Amtrak but at this point, he was also like a druggie and pretty out of control.
Right.
But anyway, he gets hired to be on the Burisma board, and it's a sweet deal. I don't know. He's getting paid like $100,000 a month for not doing much, and he makes over a 3-year period, he makes a couple, $3 million. It's a sweet deal.
Right.
Right. So, and then there is all the bullshit around that which is ridiculous about Hunter Biden's kicking back money to his dad. There's a whole bribery situation, which you can
a conspiracy theory.
Which is all bullshit.
It's totally not true, but
right. But take it as true for the sake of argument. If you take it as true, then the corruption of Hunter Biden netted the Biden family a few $1 million.
Compared to
Trump, whose corruption, like wildly visible, proudly corrupt, has netted the Trump family between $2 and $4 billion.
Billion with a B.
Yeah, and no consequences for even Hunter Biden is back on X, back on Twitter, and I like Hunter Biden because there's a certain amount of not giving a fuck where he's like, he goes on X and he says, I did some stuff, right? But look at the Trumps. Holy fuck.
Yeah. Never has the power of the presidency been monetized the way it is.
Yeah. And again, it's that same immunity that.
Yes. Yeah. These are the types of scandals that we used to cause people to resign. This puts Watergate to as a minor break-in.
So JD Vance talks about Watergate. He shows up at the Nixon Library, and he says, Watergate wasn't really that bad. If Watergate happened today, it would be like did he say a 1-day news story or a 2-week news story? He said something like that.
Right.
And JD Vance is an apologist for wild corruption, but in that statement, that it's true that if the shit that Nixon did, if Trump did it today, no consequences.
No consequences. And Nixon had an enemies list, which appalled the electorate at the time. But Trump has one, and he sicked the Department of Justice on them.
Right. So Nixon would sick the IRS on people, I believe, right?
Well, he would take punitive action, which was appalling, but nothing like getting people charged with crimes, and investigations galore.
Yeah. And we were innocent little babies. We were little kids back then. We were teenagers for Watergate.
Right.
But you know, our sensibilities, the American were so shocked at what Nixon did. Nixon, right. You know, LBJ installed a tape recording system in the Oval Office for posterity, I guess. I don't know why. But anyway, the conversations were taped, and they kept the system for Nixon. And so you can hear Nixon say, you know, racist stuff and, you know, the stuff that you would think, you know, white guys would say in the Oval Office. But there was one 18-inch gap in those tapes where they'd been erased.
Yes.
Where they obviously were plotting the Watergate or the cover-up. And his secretary took the fall for that. And they showed how she accidentally erased it because she was leaning this way and accidentally, and it was all bullshit. Yeah. But the idea that people would get in trouble for, like in today's landscape, is like, yeah, that stuff was laughably, it seemed the worst thing in the world back then. Now it seems trivial.
It's like the Epstein files had been accidentally deleted.
Yeah, and also Todd Blanche, like he's the acting AG right now.
Right.
He is currently defying a court order as of either June 2nd. So he had to turn over the rest of the Epstein files.
Right.
Nope, he's just not doing it. Impunity.
Yeah. That's it. They don't think they think they can ignore Congress, and they can ignore the Supreme Court unless the Supreme Court agrees with them. And you know, so, but the other thing is Trump was found liable, and he has to pay for defamation and for sexual assault.
So, well, yeah, for defamation, for he denied that he raped her with his fingers, and he said she was lying, and two juries found him guilty of defaming her. One for $5 million, and the second jury, because he kept on defaming her, and she went back to court. The second jury for $83 million. So the $5 million is now settled. There's no further recourse, except for Trump simply refusing to pay it. I assume that at some point, but I don't know. I haven't read it. I haven't looked into it. That $5 million is sitting in an escrow account, waiting the outcome, which has now been set by the Supreme Court. I assume the $5 million is somewhere where Trump can't stop it from being turned over, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know that, and I do think that Trump will delay,
right,
so that she doesn't get paid. But he's exhausted his legal recourse, and so it's turned out to be true that he did defame this woman, and the juries believed her and not him. And so this is just another example. I mean, how many felonies was he convicted of? Over 30?
Well, 34. But I mean, it was basically the same felony 34 times.
Mm-hmm.
That his modus,
tax evasion,
is not, it's not an uncommon thing. But the extent to which he did it was uncommon, where when you want to get if you're using your property as collateral, you're going to tell the bank, my property is worth $1 billion. If when it comes to paying property taxes or inheritance taxes, you're going to tell the IRS, my property is worth $2.
Right.
And that's what he did, but like to a wild extent, like Mar-a-Lago, on the one hand is worth 100 million, on the other hand is worth 2 million.
Right.
Depending on who's asking.
But there was also falsification of corporate records as well. There was the Trump University, and the Trump organization itself was in trouble for not paying taxes or defrauding. So there was more than just the real estate nonsense, which, as you say, often goes on, overstating in one case and understating in another. But and of course, he abused it in such a way that it came to be called a felony, and he was convicted of it. So that wasn't enough to dissuade voters from voting for him, or enough voters.
It felt like, well, lawfare is what they call it, like legal warfare against your enemies.
Right, right. And so yeah, he's also a consistent theme is he's been, poor me, he's been attacked and unjustly, feel sorry for me because I'm up against it. I'm fighting for you guys, but they keep attacking me, and people seem to buy that. They
So
seem to believe
Trump is the biggest, Trump and family, they're the biggest deadbeats in U.S. history as a family. But if you add up all the defaults for creditors, somebody does a job for Trump,
Yeah.
a contractor, workers,
Labor.
somebody loans them a few $100 million. The IRS wants what it's owed for inheritance. If you add up all the legitimate debts that they have tried to skip out on, it adds up to about $1.5 billion. And that's as of a few years ago. That doesn't include, the latest bullshit around crypto.
Right.
But Trump has like what he does is you set up a contract with Trump. You're a contractor. You're going to do, say, the interiors of Trump Tower for 3 floors, and Trump agrees to pay you $2.5 million, and you do the work. And really, everybody should know this about contractors. You on the one hand, you don't pay contractors for work they haven't done. You pay them as they go, because contractors skip out a lot. And on the other side, contractors need to get paid as they go because guys like Trump exist. So anyway, a contractor does $2.5 million worth of work, thinking, before Trump became notorious for this bullshit, thinking, he's a huge businessman. He'll and then he does the work, and Trump says, I don't like the work you did. I'm not going to pay you. And the contractor's like, what's the matter with the work? And he goes, well, this molding's crooked. And you're like, the contractor's like, no, it isn't. It's perfectly fine. And Trump says, I'm not going to pay you. Take me to court. You take him to court. And then his lawyers argue with your lawyers. And his lawyers basically say, look, you can fight us. We can fight you for 3 years, and it's going to cost you $500,000. And any profit you might make off this transaction is going to be paid to lawyers. Right. And then Trump's lawyers say, we'll pay you $800,000 right now to stop. And
they take it.
They take it. And, some of them go bankrupt. One of them committed suicide.
This is why the New York City people found out about Trump before the rest of us did.
Right.
Because he was pulling that kind of stuff. And then New Yorkers knew it. And he couldn't be trusted to pay the laborers, the people that were doing the work.
But the rest of America still doesn't know it. I mean, some people do, but there are some people, willingly gullible people who still think he's a business genius.
Yeah. Although he was born on third base and he thought he hit a triple, is the way that people put it. Because
there's the standard thing that if he hadn't tried to be a businessman, if he'd taken the money he inherited, which was, I don't know, 450, 500 million, I think, all told, and just put it in T-bills or some other safe investment account,
sure,
he would have had more money now than he had through all his business efforts.
Yeah. And also, don't forget that he said that he was graduated top of his class from Wharton. Now, Wharton is part of the University of Pennsylvania.
He didn't really go to Wharton the way people say they will.
Exactly. And Wharton has a good MBA program, and so the implication is that that's what he graduated from, but he never attended
No,
that.
he went to the UPenn, University of Pennsylvania. If you study economics as an undergrad at UPenn, you're going to the Wharton School.
Right.
But nobody who goes studies econ as an undergrad says I went to Wharton. They
Right.
say I went to UPenn, except
It's intentionally misleading.
Right. Who's a bullshitter.
Yeah. Yeah. And also he said he graduated from the top of his class, and he will sue the UPenn if they release his transcripts. And but they do release the honor rolls, and he never appears on it.
Right.
So how do you?
I mean, he also said he was the third best baseball prospect in the state of New York in high school. And his records as a baseball player also exist. And no, he was just a guy who played baseball. I mean, yeah, you have to be a pretty good player to make your team at your school, but that doesn't make you, a recruiting prospect for the freaking Yankees.
Right. And so this fear, I think it's a low self-esteem kind of issue where he has got this grandiosity need. Everything has to be like he won't settle for a Doric column. He has to have a Corinthian column. These are all part of a pattern in his life where he has to be bigger, better.
I've considered, like I've I will occasionally tweet an offensive tweet. And I'm probably not going to tweet this because it's too stupid, but that I've changed my pubes from Doric to Corinthian.
Well, yes, that's better left to the imagination. But the European leaders are standing up to him now. He's has a real problem with the Italian prime minister. Apparently Spain is now on the list. France was on the list, and Denmark, he's fighting with Denmark over Greenland, and Denmark is saying Greenland's not for sale. So will he just take it at some point? And I think Cuba would already have overrun if it had oil, but it doesn't.
So I think we have to ask, what are the implications? Like, we're here bitching about Trump for the most part. What are the implications of, okay, so my wife worries about money. We're going to run out of money. You're going to die. I'm going to die. My pensions for her as the survivor is going to get cut in half. What if I run out of money? And we did some calculations, and she doesn't run out of money even under the worst case scenario for another 18 years. So like I asked her, I haven't really asked her this, but like, how much of a shit should you give about old lady you? Like, if I die when you're 70, you'll have enough money even if you spend like a crazy person until you're 88. And then what happens? It's like, what do you think would happen? Like, it doesn't mean that you're in the gutter as an 88-year-old. And, you'd still have Medi-Cal, you'd still have our daughter to sponge off of. Like, I haven't asked her to imagine the implications. And like, also you'd be 88, you'd be this decrepit old, because we remember what her mom was like at 88. Her mom was not in any state to give a shit about whether her board and care was fancy or not. So I gotta ask, with our roaring, what are the implications of? So we've got the midterms. What are the implications if Trump wins the midterms and holds on to the House and the Senate? And what are the implications if he loses the House and maybe the Senate? Is any of this shit going to matter? Is Trump just going to keep on doing the shit he does? Does the shit matter? He does a lot of stuff just because it makes us cry as liberals. We fill our coffee cups with lib tears for MAGAs to joyously drink. But does any of it frickin' matter? Does all of this just nonsense while AI quietly takes over?
Well, The last point is another topic for another roar. But the main point is, do our elections matter? Um, does the power of the presidency transcend the other branches of government? This is what's at stake. And I think that if the results are in Trump's favor, then the United States has given up on democracy. And we're, instead of exporting democratic principles to the rest of the world, we're importing czarist principles from Russia. And we are going to be in a different type of country. And the future, the children now who grow up in and the children to come will grow up in a very different United States than you and I grew up in, and with different beliefs and different expectations. And it will be a fundamental betrayal of how the aspirations of the founding fathers of this country, all the people that bled to keep it throughout all these generations, and all the people that have sacrificed so much for this. We're going to turn our backs on them now, or are we going to show up in mass and vote to throw those bums out and to restore people who have a respect for democracy, or respect for the way of life that the United States has been a shining example, as Reagan would say, for the rest of the world. Now, will we shine again? I hope so. Do I believe so? I have no idea, because we have at least 1/3 of the country, I believe, that still thinks that when Trump is
All right.
you
So
know,
yeah,
great.
it's also what Superman says, standing for truth, justice,
Justice in
and
the
the
American
American
way.
way. Superman is so powerful, and the U.S. is so powerful that we can afford to be nice to the rest of the world. Right? That's
Well,
the story we tell her. We saved the world from
but
fascism, World
we
War
have,
II.
yeah, and we have cut off humanitarian aid to the poor in other
At the
countries.
cost of hundreds of thousands of lives.
Absolutely right.
And MAGA says, yeah, but those were foreign lives, and why can't they save themselves? We're not the world's babysitter.
The way we made allies and friends was because of things like foreign aid, helping out when it was not just in our interest, but in someone else's interest. And that's how you build alliances. And that's how you become the leader of the free world, whether we ever were or not. That's what we portrayed ourselves as. And because we would do things like that, take care of helping people in times of need. And we did not rush into World War II because there was a strong sense of isolationism. That's a war over.
Yeah, World War II was going for 2 full years before we got involved.
And we got involved because Pearl Harbor was bombed. And so the strong sense of isolationism is not new. The strong sense of isolationism has been around for a long, long time, but it doesn't work. This is a global environment now. And what we need is a global community to act and believe that we are a global community, that we are human beings first and foremost. And that what we have, if we look for the differences, we will find them. But if we look for the similarities, we just might find those as well. And when we take that approach, we have allies around the world. And we, instead of taking initiating a war of choice and then saying, where are my allies? You build the alliances first, and you consult with them before you take action. And this is the way you do things if you have any sense of humanity. And I think that this is one of the things that is missing from the personality and character of Donald Trump, is that he has no sense of what it is to be human. He is incapable of empathy and sympathy. He is not capable of thinking about, oh, I stepped on your neck to get up ahead. Well, that's your problem. You're a loser, And there are people like that. Some of them advance very far in society, and they get rewarded and respected because they have advanced so far. But this is a bad message to send to children, to teach the young, that by stepping on someone's neck to lift yourself up, that's not the way to raise up. There is a way to raise every boat at the same time. And it's not communism, it's not socialism to think like this. You can still make money, you can still profit by doing this, but by not taking advantage of others, but by using whatever talents you have to succeed. And sometimes someone that you're working with, it's another company perhaps, you want them to be successful too, because if they're successful, you can do more trades, more business with them. And this
Yeah.
is a way to look at other countries. If they're successful, then they have more goods to export to us, and they can buy more from us.
Yeah, well, that requires sophisticated thought. Trump is incautious and lazy in his thinking. He'll just say whatever.
He can't even be briefed by.
So, freaking Obama.
He can't pay attention to the briefings.
Obama was too cautious. Obama was, carefully, obviously, from the way he appeared and said stuff, he obviously considered everything he said and did within the context of an overall kind of theme of self-presentation and also the presidency.
Yes.
And actually, he got played a little bit because of that. He was too cautious. And frickin' Biden's White House hid Biden because they didn't want to provide Fox News with more clips. But Trump just says whatever the frick just happens into his head.
Even if it contradicts what he said yesterday.
Right. So, but let's take a look at it from the other side, which is the other side says, you voted for this, so tough titty. The Dodgers, my team, happy. I mean, the Dodgers spend more money, I think, on their players than any other team. They're 14 games ahead in their division before the All-Star break. They are just a juggernaut because they bought all the great players. The
Right.
Yankees used to do this, and people can complain, but that's the system. And
there was a play called "Damn Yankees." Yes.
Yeah, but the other side says, you voted this in, you voted, to the House, the Senate.
We
this
did.
is the way it goes. You gave us a mandate. They didn't really have a mandate because Trump only got 49% of the vote. He only beat Harris by less than 1.5% of the vote.
Right.
Harris got 47 point, I don't know.
Yeah. And it was only really the Electoral College that got him the presidency.
Well, I mean, Hillary actually got 2.8 million more votes than Trump did, and it was
that was the first time Trump won an election, in terms of
but the other side says these are the rules. We won according to the rules, and we're going to do what we want. It is based on voting, and an optimistic view of this is that, we voted this jackass in, but this jackass won't be president forever. We can vote him out. We can take over, we can win over that. It's a little bit rosy because we remember when Mitch McConnell just stonewalled replacing
the Supreme Court justice.
Right. Yes. And leading to the current Supreme Court, which is
3 Trump appointees. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mitch McConnell is part of some more horse shit, even as a dead guy, where they hide him for a month and a half.
Yeah, I have to laugh so that I won't cry into someone else's cup. But I do believe that, and I believe this in the last election, so I was proven wrong. But I do believe the better angels will survive, allow the country to survive, and not as a warped version of the previous country, but as a country that has had its challenges before and will have challenges again. And I do believe that our better angels will tell us, go to the polls, throw these bums out. This is not the way the country should be, in the direction the country should be going in. And I do believe that this will happen, but it's very close call in too many places for me to have any confidence. So I don't know if it's just hope, but I do believe that these races, which are very close in many states, including, we just had a surprise in Maine where the very dubious Democrat nomination was
Graham Plattner.
Was
more
forced to leave.
Women came out saying that, he'd sexually assaulted or just full on raped him.
Yeah. And so that wasn't tolerated. And, whatever is in the Epstein files, too many people are just brushing it away. But the Democrats at least wouldn't tolerate these kinds of allegations going forward. And now that tosses a pretty nice opportunity into the Maine. Susan Collins will probably get reelected again, and the Maine was definitely
she's awful.
And she's voted just along the lines that she voted for RFK Jr. Come on.
What makes her particularly awful is she's pretty much, she votes along very conservative Republican lines, but she makes a lot of noise like she might not do that. She's always concerned, and so she raises. She's Lucy with the football. She teases you like she might do the right thing and not vote for an asshole, then turns around again in the final analysis. She says, yeah, it'll be okay. I'm going to vote for the asshole anyway.
Yeah. And so I was hopeful that there might be some surprises in Texas. And I'm still hopeful that
there could be, because again, it's this immunity where Ken Paxton, who is running against Tallarico, Ken Paxton is a scumbag, engaged in all sorts of corruption in order to cover up multiple affairs he had, engaged in securities fraud, is right now he's separated. So, there's a certain amount of hypocritical. He was a few days ago, he was touring. He should be running for office, but no, he took a trip with his mistress. He's still not divorced, but he's over in London with his girlfriend. Though that's really that's fine because he's been separated for a year. You're allowed to have a girlfriend when you're. Sure. But anyway, overall, that's the least of what he's done that's scummy. Tallarico is a divinity student, and he gets attacked for being a pussy, for being skinny and wimpy, and they say he's trans or he's got a girl. And he might lose for not being manly enough.
Yeah. This toxic masculinity is another theme that's been going on because Trump is a tough guy. He's bombing Iran, killing.
So I wish Tallarico would take it to him and say, look, you think I'm a pussy. Let's go 3 rounds in a ring. The lieutenant governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, was attacking Tallarico for the amount of weight he might lift at the gym. He probably can't even pick up a 10-pound dumbbell. Dan Patrick is 70 years old and is a little bit decrepit himself. I would love for Tallarico to say, well, let's freaking box. Let's go and get in the ring. I might not be the strongest guy, but I could probably knock you on your ass.
Wasn't one of the tackier things that Trump did Ultimate Fighting on the White House grounds?
Well, that was one thing. But the day before the Ultimate Fighting, he had motocross stunts, X Games. He built a motorcycle ramp where the ring was going to be, and he had people doing aerial motorcycle.
Tough guys love that. Yeah.
And so just crazy crap.
Maybe we should do Ultimate Fighting with the Texas guys.
Okay, I apologize for the noise. We have a guy who.
I understand. Yeah, that's okay. Because in some sense, we can drown him out.
Okay. But there's one more flavor to our current malaise, which is that we are stupider and more distracted because we have our devices. In 2007, there were 0 smartphones in the world. Now there are 7.4 billion. More than 70% of all the people on Earth have a smartphone. And the Atlantic magazine a couple days ago released an article that shows statistically how bad we've gotten at reading. We no longer have the focus to be able to get through a book. That younger people statistically find reading a book for pleasure or for any purpose like alien and just like incomprehensible.
Yeah.
and IQ, the average IQ of the entire planet has been dropping. And this is concerning because it means we're more manipulatable.
Absolutely.
However, so it's like we're hermit crabs. If you ever, I had to deal with hermit crabs. Hermit crabs are these soft little creatures until they find an empty shell. Then they climb into the shell, install themselves in the shell. Then they're able to operate in the world. So, humans used to operate without devices. And if you make us operate without our devices, we're freaking hermit crabs without a shell. We're soft and vulnerable.
Yeah.
However, that's not how we work anymore. We've got our devices, and we can be optimistic that in combination with AI, with whatever our phone is telling us, maybe in the future we won't be so schmucky.
So we've got that on our side.
I hope. I don't know. I mean, AI is going to be our bosses, is going to be the boss of us eventually. But
eventually,
will that be a durable and positive thing?
Well, this is a question for the Modern Investing, another show that we do. We're talking about the investment strategies now. Well, AI is dictating a lot of the investment strategies. And so now you have this lemmings following what AI is saying, even in the investment world. And the people that own the real money, the real people who are on the inside of all these moves, they're doing something different. But AI is seeing the results of that. And so they're now telling everybody to invest in this, where the smart money has already moved away. So it's a losing proposition.
So AI is telling people to invest in AI, which is why the stock market keeps going up. Also because AI lets companies fire people. A lot of companies are like, well, I don't need all these customer service people. I can have AI try to answer people's questions. And it does a shitty job, but it doesn't matter, because when all customer service departments treat you like shit, the lowering tide lowers all boats.
All boats. Right. So on that note, we're going to have to wrap up, Rick. I so appreciate you being here today. And I do want to roar again next week if we can. And until then, I'm afraid that we're going to have to let someone else tell us, give voice to our aggravation for what's going on in our country today.